more great 22s from my collection and that I've rounded up for you. Thanks for all your letters and for telling me about 22s that I actually didn't know existed, much as some of the 22s that I show you aren't exactly common. I thought we'd look at some fine sporters just because of the number of people that wrote and said, well, what's the best sporter? Partly I've answered that question in an old video, and it has to do with the Winchester Model 52. You may remember this rifle. I won't go into the details. These are so hard to find. The Model 52 was made, some time ago. I think they stopped making them in the late 70s or maybe 1980. But the point is that if you can't find a Model 52 sporter, this one's actually a reproduction made by Browning in Japan, and I'll flip it around. If you have one of these channels, you never know who's seen what video and when. So I guess the video I made on this particular rifle is probably quite old. But send me a letter if you want me to go over the details. It's one of the few 22s with like a discernible action. And I can explain that if it doesn't make sense. One thing worth noting, I don't know if we can focus in on the bottom, but you'll see it says Sporter on the bottom of this Model 52. There were different versions of the Model 52. It has very quick lock time, and it has an adjustable trigger, or at least some models do. So it's a very popular target rifle, but like I was saying, they're about impossible to find. So I thought we'll start by looking at an excellent Winchester Model 75. This is the deluxe model, and the shape of the bolt handle and kind of the way it handles, it also has excellent lock time. Also the push button magazine release in the stock, it kind of evokes memories of the 52. These are also not so easy to find, especially the deluxe model. Before filming, I looked up, just because so many of you know so much more than I do about manufacturing dates, but what I read said it was made from 1938 to 1958. And if you're looking for something that has a proper stock, I actually think the stock on this particular deluxe model is better than on the 52. Clearly some proper check ring, shaping, action is good. It's not a fully developed action like the Model 52. You can see it's more of a tubular action like most 22s. It's hard to find anything like the 52, although there are a couple of Australian rifles that I looked at that were excellent, and of course the Sako is good. There are some Austrian ones. Anyway, so I correct myself, but most 22s have kind of an action that's not that much larger in diameter than the barrel. This one has some creative scope bases on it. I don't know. I don't tamper with stuff just because I buy, you have to buy used guns because they don't make these anymore. So I don't fiddle around with what people have on the rifle. This one is set up for that aperture sight. Some of you probably recognize this, but I don't have the sight. So that's worth looking at, being aware of, and if you can find them, buying. And unfortunately, I'm not a smart enough collector to constantly make money, but quite a few of my friends are constantly anticipating, like by years, what's worth buying, and they buy a bunch, and then they get discontinued, and of course the people want them, so you can put it together after that. Then we'll go into some others, but here's a sporter. I wish I had purchased a bunch of these. This is the Browning A-bolt, so made in Japan, and you know how perfect they are. And probably a lot of people will say, yeah, the Sako or the Berno and others are better, and maybe they are. Have I shot this one? I think so. Anyway, they're all very accurate rifles. This is again a deluxe model. I think Browning calls them a medallion grade. What's really remarkable with a lot of the Browning products is they not only are good, excellent, let's say, they look excellent. They've got that characteristic that Weatherby's do. They've got a gloss stock that, it's true, is easy to mark up. but if you do your part, they look good for a long time. I think this is probably the best recent sporter, let's put it that way. I mean, they even, instead of having white line spacers, they have kind of brass spacers, rosewood fore-end tip. Beautiful walnut stock on this one. I don't know if you can make out the grain. Sometimes the the gloss finish, which I'm assuming is an epoxy or a urethane, the reflection blocks out the grain. But you can see it's a first-class rifle. These were changing hands, after they were discontinued for not that much money. But even I knew it's got a proper action. Everything is the way you would want it to be. This assembly on the bottom is beautifully made, and it carries the Browning logo. It's got a typical A-bolt shape. If you can find one of these, you'll never lose money on them. And in the meantime, they're excellent in the field. Again, I wish there was, some iron sights. I have others that are lesser models, and they do have iron sights. You can see what happens over time. With recoil pads, you know this already, but a lot of them, they do deteriorate. And ironically, the more natural the rubber is, the quicker they look like that. But it's not a big deal to replace that. So that's an excellent sporter. And maybe some of you are lucky enough to have an A-bolt. I'm thinking I'm going to show you something else, but in a minute. Most accurate 22 semi-auto. There are fellows I know that customize Ruger 1022s, and companies like Delask and others, Volkwarts, and I don't know all the names probably as well as you do. Phenomenally accurate range rifles, but for a sporter, the most accurate, just based on my recent testing, is this humble Anschutz 22, and it happens to have a wonderfully shaped stock and iron sights. So you might be surprised to see that they made a fantastically accurate semi-auto 22. I can't tell you exactly when they started or when they finished, but I remember seeing these in the 70s and 80s. They're still around. A lot of people see them and they just think that they're not, not worth buying or not interesting. I think it's a fantastic rifle. Actually, as accurate as quite a few of my bolt actions, if not more accurate, which isn't surprising because in a lot of ways accuracy lives in the barrel of any rifle with a bunch of qualifiers, and Anschutz knows how to make accurate rifle barrels. This is a model 470. Actually, it's distributed by CIL, which stands for Canadian Industries Limited, Montreal, Canada. People always ask me, what do they cost? Well, inflation, all these guns keep going up, like I said in the last video. But if you can find one for $400 or something like that, it's probably a good buy, so long as it's not beaten up too much. So that's a semi-auto. We're going to run out of time, I can tell. So I'll have to make more of these 22 videos. But here's one that is excellent. It's a J.C. Higgins Model 29. And why the hesitation? Because these were marketed by different companies. So I've owned this exact rifle model, but it has either Sears on it or some other model number. And something tells me that High Standard marketed this gun. Some of them have a sling actually right in the stock, and there's kind of a coil spring in there, so you pull the sling out of the stock. I may not have it exactly right because it was a few years ago that I owned it, but again, I don't know if there's a sleeker 22 semi-auto. A lot of collector demand for these. You can tell this comes off in one piece. They're very, very well made, and the tubular magazine 22s are a little bit of a nuisance to load, but altogether a very reliable feeding system. I've always liked actually the way they run, and don't mind that you have to pause to reload the tube. Yeah, a simple blowback action. Same with the Anschutz. You know this, that there may be somewhere 22 semi-auto that uses a different semi-automatic system. I'm not sure that I know which one. The most recent one that I bought, which has a delayed blowback, is the Savage in 17 HMR, but we'll look at that another time. If you want something super simple and like ultimately safe, and I just tried it this afternoon, remarkable accuracy as usual. This is the H&R, it's called a Sportster, so they actually have model SS1. Again, there are many names, many numbers and model numbers on these. It has an automatic ejector. It has the simplest brake open action. You can tell that, I mean, this obviously is strong enough to support the tiny 22 long rifle or short. I fired everything out of this. So of course you have to use a hammer. It comes with the sights. It's got a short stock, which is very comfortable. I have no problem with this at all. So for a younger shooter, it's fine. You could probably get a little rib of some kind or a base and then put a scope if you want. My experience is for the ranges involved with 22s, and again, there are all kinds of exceptions, and you know, it depends on eyesight and things like that. But the metallic sights are perfectly sufficient most of the time. Anyhow, that's I think we'll stop there, because if I get into those Stevens and Savages, then anyway, we'll go on to the next video. But have a look at these actions. What I'll do is I'll just hold them up, then you can see the 52 and the 75. I usually learn a lot myself while filming. So you can see the 75 is a much simpler looking rifle. There's the push button on the 75. There's the push button on the 52. Both of these would be, you know, well into the very desirable collector item, and I'll switch them like that. And yeah, you can see why people go out of their way to look for these. I'll set them down now. All right, and the next batch, I think we'll try to do 4 or 5 per video. I'll try to get some of the ones that you're telling me about. These smoothbore 22s are intriguing to me that you're mentioning, and we've got, you know, we've got a bunch of Remingtons, more modern Remingtons that you'll like. Oh, and we have a special guest coming. You'll like the next video, or then maybe a couple of videos forward, I don't know. Anyhow, I hope that's interesting, and keep going with your collecting and the amazing notes that you send me. Stay healthy, and I will too, and we'll see you next time. Bye.